You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast for our final Ashes 2023 episode. We're going to recap the series. We're going to talk about the great moments. We're going to talk about the bad moments. We're going to talk about our favourite players as we build a composite 11 and generally just have a lot of fun. I'm Jack Hope. I'm joined by Max Rowe-Brown. How are you doing, Max Rowe-Brown?
Hello. Yeah, I'm very good. I've got my alcohol-free beer because now all the excitement of the Ashes is over. I have to detox, so I'll do that in every way I can. But otherwise, I'm very well.
And we have Daniel Norcross on the top right for people watching on YouTube. How's your detox going?
I haven't really started it, to be honest with you. I went out for a late breakfast at about 3:30, had a lamb kebab and an Aperol Spritz. So the thing about detoxing is, at my age, you can't risk it. If you go too hard on the detox, it could kill you. So essentially, you've got to come down in very gradual increments. And last night, as you can imagine, was quite a heavy one because everybody who works, in inverted commas, in cricket is so incredibly pleased with themselves for having watched 24 days of Ashes cricket. They seem to think that they've put in more hard work than the actual players. And so we then get around to go, didn't we do well? Not really. We went and watched a lot of cricket and talked a lot of nonsense. And knowing that I was going to come on this programme with you, I thought, I'm not really out of the woods yet. And I still haven't finished my Zero Ducks podcast. I retired from Zero Ducks Given daily Ashes podcasts with one to go. At 10:21 last night, I made the decision in the Garden of the Fenceman Arms at the Oval that was it. I was never going to play Ashes daily podcast again. I suppose I might be tempted out of retirement in 2.5 years' time, like Moeen Ali was, but we will see. At the moment,
Question mark.
Yeah, lol.
Toby.
I'm sort of quite pleased with my decision, actually. I had a very enjoyable evening.
Sounds very similar to how Stuart Broad made his decision to retire, I think. Just,
Yeah, pretty much. On a whim, just like that. About 2.5 bottles of Pinot Grigio into the evening. Yeah.
Well, let's get right into it then. Daniel, yesterday, Max and I and Ross, we went through the Ashes and our initial thoughts straight after play, but we obviously haven't heard from you. What did you make of the 24 days of Ashes cricket that we saw? What were your highlights? What were your lowlights? Where did it turn? And how great a series was it? I mean, I've asked you 8 questions there, basically just let you talk about what you want.
Yeah, it's unspeakably dull, really, wasn't it? I mean, no one wants to see cricket like that. With one side just not playing the game at all, and the other side leaving the ball outside the off stump for hours on end. It was ridiculous, wasn't it? I mean, I don't know if it was the greatest series ever played, but it was possibly the most enjoyable series of back-to-back games narratively. It began with a ridiculous bang, and lots of people very vexed at Ben Stokes declaring on the first day, but it was entirely to be expected. He set the tone of what to expect from England, which was sort of the unexpected, if you know what I mean. Expect the unexpected. But of course, if you expect the unexpected, then it becomes expected, and then that defeats the entire object of everything, and you end up in a horrible
constant arms race.
You do. But it started with that wonderful bang, and the first match ended in disappointment for England, and I think for the series, because the assumption was always that Australia were absolutely shitloads better than England, man for man. So England were going to have to be at their peak to win a game of cricket. And when they didn't win it, and then when they absolutely played the most cluelessly stupid cricket for 45 minutes on the, would it have been the third day or the second day? This must be the second day at Lords. Was it when Nathan Lyon went off with his ankle? Yeah. And they'd just got into that fantastically brilliant position, and then 3 of my favourite cricketers managed to get themselves out 4 times. Actually, in fact, because Root got out twice, playing the same shot, which was fairly impressive. There were a lot of people steaming up and down, getting very angry, and saying, if you're trying to revive Test cricket, it's quite a good idea in England to win, otherwise no one's going to watch it anymore. And people got very pompous and thought they knew what Bazball was. So that was quite a highlight, was seeing just how much it seemed to matter to people. From a personal point of view, the most nervous I got was Headingley, not because of a kind of nationalistic desire for England to win, but because the series was so obviously fantastic, and we were on the front pages of the papers, and we were getting better listing figures than ever before. And, you know, across all platforms, everybody was, Sky and BBC and everybody piling in to watch it. And you thought, oh my God, what if it's 3-0? How the fuck are we going to handle the next 8 days before we go to Old Trafford? How pointless is that going to be? And then, you know, I just wanted them to get to Old Trafford because we're back-to-back games. Then you can at least extend the narrative for long enough. And then we all knew that football was going to take over, both women's football and speculation over who Doncaster are going to sign at left back, because that's incredibly important. But the rain utterly destroyed me, because I'd, again, given up any hope, really, of there being a barnstorming decider at any point, until it became clear that England were thrashing Australia and couldn't possibly do anything other than win that game. So when the rain came, that again just ruined the opportunity for this great occasion. I mean, there'd been rumours, I don't know if it was true or not, that Sky were going to put the last test on free-to-air television if it had been a decider, and you knew it would have been a national event. We love national events, you know. Again, it doesn't matter if you win a national event. England losing in the semi-finals of World Cups or finals of the Euros, doesn't matter if they win, as long as it's a national event and we all get together and all have an absolutely brilliant time and we're bonded on this septic isle where there's nothing but division and misery and hatred and social media and, you know, slightly wonky politicians, left, right and centre. And so we were deprived of that. And then I didn't really think that I cared anymore about the last test. I thought, just going through the motions, even though there's this specious notion of stopping the Australians from winning a series. I don't really think like that or particularly care about what Australia gets to do, win or lose. But I suddenly discovered yesterday at about 5:15 that I really did care. And when 4 wickets went down for 11 runs in no time at all, and the crowd at the Oval was absolutely berserk, and I got a bit emotional, and it felt great. So, you know, and then Broad getting Carey out of the last wicket. He must be the only man in Test history to hit his last ball in first class and Test cricket for 6 and win an Ashes match with his last ball that he bowled. It's utterly ridiculous. So there was all that, and then there's that great feeling you get when you're at the Oval. And I was lucky enough, not really lucky, I don't like doing interviews at the end of the game, I just want to do my podcasting and get straight in the pub, but they make you go and stand and ask, broadly speaking, anodyne questions of players who also want to get back to the changing room, crack open some beers, hand out some awards, and not drink with Australians until they get to the nightclub later on in the evening. But it was kind of touching and moving, seeing Chris Wokes' lovely eyes, his man of the series, and I'm supposed to ask him questions, and all I'm doing is gazing into his eyes. After I've gazed into Pat Cummins' eyes, and after I've been sort of looking at Stuart Broad and Mitchell Stark and just thinking, wow, what an incredible series, what incredible people. And there's this massive pavilion filled with cheering crowds, and the sun was shining, and there's going to be no more Test cricket in England for 11 and a half months. And I suppose you hipster dudes don't give a shit about that because the 100's just started and you can get your teeth into whatever's happening in the American T20. But for me, it's frankly a really depressing prospect because I'm 54 and I don't know how much longer I'm going to live. And 11 and a half months without a Test match feels to me like 11 and a half months I can't afford.
Well, quite the soliloquy there to kick things off. I love the idea of cricket as a national moment. The way you described it was almost like when the Queen died. Now everyone gets together.
Oh, it's better than that.
Well, look, following on from that, you briefly touched on how you thought you didn't care, and then turned out you did care, and the crowd cared, and everyone got invested in it. Who will not really care most, but who will be saddest, do you think, from the two sides, Australia and England? 2-2, Australia touching greatness. They've got the World Test Championship. That's A1 on the flight home. The urns there, A2. The Ashes win, the legacy-defining Ashes win, A3. Not there. Gutting. But for England, you know, effectively they did everything but win 3-2 after going 2-0 down. Similar legacy stuff that they, you know, there's no flight for them, hopefully, on the way home. But there is something sort of missing, I suppose, from that comeback.
Well, I suppose it's sort of wonderful, isn't it? Because we spend our lives defending this game to skeptics and essentially people with narrow minds, and saying, "Yeah, I know it can last 5 days. Yes, I know it could be a draw. That's the point. That's one of many points, but it's a very important point." And so I guess there was something wonderfully fitting that there should be so much euphoria in both camps and so much excitement and adrenaline, and that at the end of it, they just look at each other and go, "Oh, neither of us won." Neither of us, neither of you won. No, so yeah, you're both. Yeah, we're both actually a bit miserable. Yeah, I mean, England will dress it up and say how it proves that they're able to go toe to toe with the best team in the world using their methods and all that kind of stuff, and they'll give all that malarkey. But some of them have a brain and some imagination, so they will be really gutted that the rain did for them. They'll also convince themselves, and they're totally correct in this, that there's nothing much you can do about being rained on, because that's, unless they are, as was it Stuart Broad suggested, the luckiest group of cricketers in the world, which it turns out they're not. Then it's not going to happen to you. So I suppose they won't blame themselves for it, but there will be sadness about what might have been. For Australia, I think it must be such a hollow retention of the Ashes, because this isn't having a dig at them. It's just the truth. In fact, being a sportsman, and you're celebrating retaining the Ashes, you're holding your little urn up, but you haven't actually won a game for 29 days or whatever it was. When was it? The last game they won was about the 29th of July or something. So 30 days of June, 30 odd days. And so, normally when you win a trophy, it's because you've just won it. I mean, sometimes I suppose you'll collect the Premier League trophy and you might have lost the last 2 games, but that really doesn't matter, because the trophy is a trophy. It's about what you've done over the course of the season. Whereas this is a long old time since they last won a game, and they were completely obliterated at Old Trafford, and really they were dominated throughout the Oval. So I don't know how you get euphoric about that. You can look back with some pride, but there'll be a bunch of players going, "We've never been to England, and we're never going to go to England and win a series." It must be quite difficult when you're Australian, because the people who are commenting on your performances are these lizard-eyed, brilliant geniuses from their past who won every series. You didn't win a bloody England's piece of piss, mate. 89, 93, 97, 2001. You must be some pathetic soft cock wanker not to beat the fucking Poms. And that must be, broadly speaking, disappointing. I hate the word disappointing. Gutting, miserable for them. So yeah, I mean, I can't sum it up any other way other really than, isn't it so cricket? The most wonderful spectacle over the last 6 weeks, and you're left with everyone shrugging their shoulders and being largely disappointed. It's a great advert for the game.
Mac Daddy, we talked about this yesterday. 2-2. You said at the time it was a fair result, with 24 hours to let it sink in.
Didn't say
have
fair.
You changed?
Didn't say
have
fair.
You changed
I said
your
it was
mind?
Fitting. I said I
fitting.
don't like
That's
saying
kind
fair.
of the same.
I said it was a fitting
with F
result.
and everything.
Yeah. I know I haven't changed my mind, but I do. I would echo what Daniel said about how funny it is that all of this has ended in a draw, and particularly how England have made such big bones about going out and saying, like, when we play a test match, I'd rather lose trying to win than draw it. So even with that, like, we want to win or lose, and by winning or losing, they've still drawn the whole thing. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I suppose it would be nice if there were an ultimate victor, but I just think, like we said yesterday, every game was so close, apart from the one that was rained off, that I think 2-2, is it's something that we can all accept. I think
if it had gone the other way round, I reckon if England had won the first 2 and Australia had come back to level it at 2-2, that would have been, you'd have seen euphoric scenes then. That's what makes it even sillier. Because it had to be, there's only a very specific way in which you could end up with this horrible feeling of emptiness. And the only way that you can get that is through one of the most remarkable narratives in a test match series that you could ever wish to see. I mean, Andy Zaltzman, I think, gave a stat, and I can't remember the exact stat, but it's within this realm, that there were 4 matches in this series that were decided by either fewer than 50 runs or 3 wickets or fewer.
Yeah.
And if you go back through the entire history of the Ashes through like 1960 to about 1997 or so, there is only at most one such result in each series. And there were 4 of them in one. I mean, this is just absolutely absurd. You get to 2005 and there are some close-ish games. There's 2 close-ish games, aren't there? And you've got a draw with 9 wickets down, which is what makes it feel really good. So you probably said there's 3 matches in that series that were really tight. But we had 4 matches that were really tight. And that 4 out of 5, that's just daft. And then the one game when someone actually thrashes the other one, it's like the gods went, no, that doesn't look right. No, we have to stop, stop this game now. That's not the story. The story is that you're both incredibly evenly matched. Sorry.
I said yesterday that I thought it was the best series ever, and with 24 hours hindsight, I'd agree with that. In fact, I'd even more strongly agree with myself. I think yesterday there was some doubt. I was like maybe 2005. The fact that it doesn't have a decider and it does end in a situation where both teams, I suppose, will have regrets. Do you think that detracts from the greatness of the series, or will we look back on it and maybe fall into the Max camp that it's fitting for such a tight series that everyone is a little bit?
I think it depends on your temperament, you see. I think actually for a lot of people it will detract from it, and that's the sadness of it, because a lot of people will go, yeah, cricket was really good that year, wasn't it? Oh, there were some really good games. But because of the nature of its conclusion, it's hard to sort of go back and watch that. I can't wait to see this because it's so brilliant. At the end, it's so brilliant. Well, it's so brilliant. It ends in a 2-2 draw with both sides strangely disappointed. So because it doesn't drip with that euphoria that's everywhere, I don't know whether it's going to have quite the same emotional pull. But for people who just love cricket, and I was so lucky, I was at every game, every day of every game. So for me, I'm going to remember it with an amazing amount of fondness, but just because of the entertainment, the bewildering, berserk narratives within each game, the fact that I was convinced of something and would have to be deconvinced of it almost immediately. It was happening. Australia are well on top in this game. Oh, Marnus Labuschagne's got up to Moeen Ali. They're still on top. Oh, Steve Smith just chipped it to short mid-wicket. He never does that. Fuck me, they're 3 down. England are back in this. Things like that would happen so suddenly. England are way on top here at Lord's. There's no way they're going to get a wicket. Nathan Lyon's got off. They're going to piss this. They're going to score 600. Oh, they've all just tossed their wickets away. How on earth does that happen? Just that moments just constantly kept coming on to confound you. So my personal memories of it will be that it's my favourite series, the favourite series I've been involved in, the favourite series I've seen lots and lots of. But I fear that in terms of legendary status, almost mythical status, about people being misty-eyed and nostalgic in 20 years' time, I think the nature of its ending will make it a connoisseur series rather than unite the nation in 5 million new cricket fans. I hope I'm wrong, but it sort of feels like a bit.
I wonder if it would be like a sort of slow burn. It's almost like when you have a really a fireworks ending to something. There's that catharsis, and then like the laws of thermodynamics, it immediately contracts. Every action has an opposite reaction. It's such a big ending, and then suddenly it's all gone, and like you're massively hungover. Basically, you get really hammered watching the watching it all go crazy, and then the next day you're like, oh, it's all over, and now I'm really sad. Whereas maybe with this, it'll be like actually we'll just constantly look back on it with some fondness because we never drank too much. We just kept it at like a steady steady rate. And there were peaks and troughs, but at the end of it, we were just happily drunk for 2 months, and we'll look back on it as one of the fondest times that we can remember, rather than that was great, but then actually at the end it was really bad because I felt terrible.
you're right.
Maybe I shouldn't do it again for a while.
I hope you're right, because it was a privilege, wasn't it, to get to watch it all, if you were lucky enough to get to watch it all. Not just there, I mean, if you were lucky enough to skip work and watch it, or whatever it is that people had to do. I had to do that in 2005. I invented meetings in pubs that didn't exist. And
pubs didn't exist.
No, the meetings didn't exist. I'd invent the meeting in a proper office, and then I'd bugger off to a pub about 3 miles away from my office and just watch cricket for a bit. But, you had to go through all that in order to make it happen, which is part of the reason, why I can sort of identify with people who were falling in love with this series while it was happening, but what that leaves them with at the end of it. Because it was so good, and the contrast in styles was so amazing, that if you liked cricket, you suddenly felt extraordinarily smug. I mean, if people don't like cricket and they tell you they don't like cricket, much of the time you just get really annoyed with them, like the Afghanistan coach in that brilliant documentary Out of the Ashes, when he just berates this Belgian bloke for never having watched cricket. You've never watched cricket, you idiot! But this year, I felt smug. I felt, well, we'll fool you. You're missing out. This is just magnificent. It's like,
It's like this all the time.
Yeah, it's like people said they don't like that. They didn't like the idea of Breaking Bad, so they never watched it. Idiot. Fine. It's no skin off my nose, but you're an idiot. So I hope that Max is absolutely right, and that we're going to be able to unite the nation behind this great sport with this. But I suspect that it's going to be people like you and me who are going to constantly wang on about it in pubs till we're old, to each other, which will be great. That's superb.
As long as you've got someone to wang on about it too.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, and that'd be nice. We'll be united in the fellowship of 2023, and we'll probably start having like code times. Like if you see one of your mates is a bit pissed, then you'll just like mime and needs to get taken home. You just mime Johnny Bairstow taking the Just Stop Oil person out at Lords. There'll be little codes that we have. Yeah, so like for example, you go into the pub and someone says, so what should we get to drink for the first round? And then you just mime Joe Root playing reverse ramp off Pat Cummins off the first ball of the day when England were in a bit of trouble. And that means 8 pints and 8 whiskey chasers immediately.
I think more subtle than that. I think a little bit more subtle than that. You take 2 beer mats and you just swap them round. That's that's the code. Right, we're going to take a quick break. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about, we're going to do a composite 11. I want to hear your favourite moment from everyone here. And we'll do our player of the series as well.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.